What would you do if after 40 years of marriage, you discovered the person you trusted most was not only cheating, but with someone inside your own family? For Linda Parker, that nightmare became reality. One late night, she stumbled across a trail of evidence, a perfume that wasn't hers, a suspicious dinner receipt, and finally an email that shattered her heart. But what she uncovered next was even darker than betrayal. Her husband, Richard, wasn't just unfaithful. He was plotting with their daughter-in-law, Amanda, to take everything Linda had built with her own hands. Instead of collapsing, Linda devised a plan that would leave an entire neighborhood speechless, a scandal so shocking, even the fire department had to intervene. Stay with me, because what happened inside that house will leave you asking yourself, how far would you go for the truth? The first crack in Linda Parker's perfect life didn't come with a scream or a fight, or even a tear. It came quietly, like a whisper she wasn't supposed to hear. One late evening, Linda sat alone at the kitchen table, the dim yellow light of the old chandelier spilling over stacks of unpaid invoices from her bakery. The house felt too still, almost staged, as if life itself had stopped holding its breath. She stared at the clock on the wall, an heirloom from her late father. Each tick sounded like a hammer pounding out a truth she didn't want to face. Richard Parker, her husband of 40 years, had just returned home from what he called another business dinner. His tie was half loosened, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion or maybe guilt. He barely glanced at Linda before collapsing into bed. She wanted to believe he was simply tired, but there was something in the air, something sour beneath the faint trace of his cologne. And then it hit her, a perfume she didn't own. Sweet, floral, unmistakable. When his steady snores began to fill the bedroom, Linda's stomach twisted. Once that sound had soothed her. Now it mocked her. It was the lullaby of a liar. She busied herself by tidying up, but her hands trembled as she picked up his jacket, his wallet, and finally his phone screen still glowing. Richard never used email. He always said technology wasn't worth the trouble. But now an unread message blinked at her like a warning beacon. Her heart thudded in her ears as she opened it. The words were simple, yet devastating. "You were incredible tonight, Dad." Linda's knees nearly buckled. Dad. The words screamed inside her head, rattling her bones. Who would call him that with such intimacy, such affection? It wasn't their son, Ethan. It couldn't be. Her thumb scrolled desperately, searching for more clues, but the sender's email address was a jumble of nonsense offering no answers. Just more shadows. Richard stirred in the bedroom. Linda shoved the phone back on the table, her pulse wild. But as she gathered his pants for the laundry, her fingers brushed something sharp, crisp paper folded neatly. She pulled it out. It was a receipt. Steakhouse, Austin, Texas. Her eyes narrowed. Richard had told her he was meeting partners in Houston that night. But here was proof he had been in Austin, instead dining with someone. A party of two. A bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, the exact wine he had once bought her for their 10th anniversary. Linda's throat tightened. She remembered that night so clearly, the way his eyes had glowed with pride as they toasted her first bakery opening in Charleston. That memory now felt like a cruel joke, nothing more than a faded snapshot in an album of lies. She snapped a picture of the receipt, adding it to the growing gallery of doubts. And then in the garage, she found what she was most afraid of. Inside the glove compartment of Richard's old SUV sat a half-used tube of personal lubricant. Linda stared at it frozen. They hadn't been intimate in years. He had always brushed her off with excuses, too tired, too stressed, too old. So, who was he using this with? Her fingers trembled violently as she replaced it, wiping her palms raw on a napkin. She wanted to scream, but the sound stayed trapped inside her chest. Instead, she photographed it, storing away the evidence like ammunition. By morning, Richard came down to breakfast, coffee in hand, spouting the same tired excuse about a meeting that would run late. Linda forced a smile and nodded. She wanted to scream, where with who? But she stayed quiet. Her silence was her shield. When the door closed behind him, the kitchen fell into an unbearable hush. Linda felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. 40 years of marriage cracking apart like thin glass. That was when she made the call. "Hello, Nancy," she whispered into the phone, her voice quivering. "You once told me about a private investigator. I think I need him." Nancy Cooper, an old friend, didn't press for details. Within the hour, Linda had the number for Mark Davidson, a discreet PI, known for exposing infidelity without leaving a trace. By noon, she sat across from him in a quiet corner of a coffee shop, her hands clutching a flash drive with the photos she had collected, the email, the receipt, the tube of lubricant. Mark, a man of steady composure, reviewed the evidence without flinching. "Mrs. Parker," he said gently, "I'll follow him. Don't worry, we'll find the truth." The words made her chest tighten. Did she even want the truth? That night the truth came faster than she imagined. Her phone buzzed with a message from Mark. A single photo. Richard hand in hand with a woman walking into the Regency Grand Hotel in Austin. Linda's stomach dropped. The woman's face was unmistakable, even blurred beneath heavy makeup and flowing hair. It was Amanda Collins, her daughter-in-law, Ethan's wife. The betrayal burned like acid in Linda's veins. She replayed every family dinner, every holiday, every cold glance Amanda ever gave Richard. She had mistaken it for indifference. Now she realized it was an act, a cover for a secret so vile it made her skin crawl. Linda pressed the photo to her chest, shaking her heart, screaming for answers she wasn't sure she wanted. Her husband, her son's wife, together, laughing, touching, acting like lovers. She couldn't sleep that night. The bakery felt hollow, every tray of pastries, reminding her of the dream she had built with her own hands, while Richard plotted to take it all away. She stayed awake waiting for her phone to buzz again. And it did. A video. Mark's camera zoomed from a distance, capturing Richard at a candlelit table, gazing at Amanda the way he hadn't looked at Linda in decades. Amanda leaned close, whispering into his ear. Richard threw his head back and laughed. Linda covered her mouth, a strangled sound escaping her throat. She watched the video again and again, torturing herself with each frame. 40 years of love, 40 years of sacrifice, and this was what she got. Her hands trembled violently as she saved the evidence, naming each file, cataloging it with the precision of a soldier preparing for war. She no longer cared if she was shaking. She no longer cared if her heart broke, because she had already made a decision. She would not let Richard and Amanda destroy her or the bakery she had built. They thought she was weak. They thought she was blind. But Linda Parker was about to remind them she had claws too. Linda Parker woke before dawn, staring at the ceiling as the truth burned through her chest like fire. Sleep no longer came. The evidence had been etched into her mind, the photo of Richard with Amanda, their hands entwined, his smile shining for a woman half her age, for her own son's wife. Every sound in the house now felt like a betrayal. The drip of the faucet, the creak of the wooden floor, the faint rustle of Richard's breathing in the next room. She couldn't bear to look at him without seeing Amanda's lipstick on his collar, her perfume lingering in the SUV. By sunrise, Linda had made her decision. She wasn't going to confront him, not yet. No, she wanted him to feel the sting of exposure. She wanted the mask ripped away in front of everyone he had fooled. That morning, she watched Richard shuffle into the kitchen, hair disheveled, a mug of black coffee in his hand. "Big meeting today," he muttered, not meeting her eyes. "Don't wait up tonight." Linda forced a smile so calm it startled her. "Of course. Be careful." As he left, she noticed something glinting on the table, his car keys. Her heart pounded as she slipped them into her pocket. Minutes later, she was in the garage, the air thick with gasoline and lies. She opened the glove box, and there it was, again, the tube of lubricant. Her stomach turned, but she didn't flinch this time. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a tube of industrial superglue she had once used to fix a bakery chair. She held both tubes side by side. One was betrayal, the other her weapon. With steady hands, she squeezed the glue into the lubricant container, drop by drop until it was full. She wiped the nozzle, shook it lightly, and smiled grimly. No one would ever notice the difference. She slipped it back exactly where she'd found it, arranging every detail so perfectly that Richard would never suspect a thing. Her revenge was no longer just a fantasy, it was already in motion. Later that day, Linda returned to the bakery. Flour dusted her apron, the ovens roared with heat, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She baked tray after tray of sweet bread, but each knead of dough was fueled by rage, every strike of her fist into the soft mixture echoing her fury at Richard and Amanda. At lunch, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark Davidson, the PI. "Mrs. Parker, I have more for you. Meet me this evening. It's urgent." Her chest tightened as she read the words. That evening, she met Mark at a quiet diner outside of town. He slid a flash drive across the table, his face unreadable. "It's worse than you think," he said softly. Linda plugged it into her laptop the moment she returned home. What she saw made her hands shake so violently she nearly dropped the device. Photos of Richard and Amanda leaving a law office together, holding hands like lovers. In another shot, they stood before the glowing glass doors of the Regency Grand Hotel, their bodies close. Amanda's sunglasses pushed low on her nose like a guilty disguise. But the worst was the video. Mark had filmed from a distance, capturing them on a third-floor balcony. Richard's arm draped around Amanda's waist, Amanda's head resting against his chest. And then the kiss. Quick, shameless, intimate. Linda froze, tears burning her eyes, but there was no sound, no sob, just silence. Cold, suffocating silence. But Mark had also captured audio snippets of their conversations in the hotel parking lot. Linda's blood went cold as Amanda's voice cut through the static, "Dad, hurry up with that fake contract. I want those bakery stores in my name. That old hag won't see it coming." Richard's voice followed deep and certain. "Don't worry, Linda trusts me too much. By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late." Linda gripped the table until her knuckles turned white. They weren't just cheating. They were planning to strip her of everything she had built: her bakery, her home, her life's work. Her rage turned sharp-focused. She wasn't going to let them take it. Not now. Not ever. The next night, she laid her trap. In the kitchen, she prepared a skillet of oil on the stove, setting a thin string from the igniter out the window to an old coffee can weighted on the porch. A simple tug would ignite the oil, sending black smoke pouring from the kitchen, a signal for the neighbors. A staged fire. She checked her recorder, an old device she had once bought for Ethan when he was in college. She tucked it behind the headboard in the bedroom, hidden by a family photo of Ethan and Amanda on their wedding day. The irony made her stomach churn. That recorder would capture everything Richard and Amanda said, every groan, every confession, every insult. Before dawn, Linda kissed Richard lightly on the cheek and whispered, "I have to travel to Atlanta today to meet a new supplier. Don't wait up." He smiled faintly, almost relieved. "Take your time. I'll handle things here." His eyes betrayed him. He was eager for her to leave. Linda didn't go to Atlanta. Instead, she crossed the street to Carolyn Mitchell's house, her longtime neighbor. Carolyn raised an eyebrow at the sight of Linda's large purse. "Trouble?" she asked quietly. "Something like that," Linda murmured. "Mind if I stay for a while?" From Carolyn's window, Linda had the perfect view of her own front porch. Hours later, just as she expected, a cab pulled up. Amanda stepped out dressed in a light floral dress, oversized sunglasses shielding her face. Richard opened the door and hurried her inside. Linda's pulse quickened. She pulled on the string. The stove flared, the oil ignited, and black smoke spiraled from the kitchen window. Within minutes, the neighborhood erupted in alarm. Shouts rang out, "Linda's house is on fire!" "Call the fire department." Linda stayed calm, sipping coffee from Carolyn's mug. Through her headphones connected to the hidden recorder, she heard Amanda's panicked shriek, "Richard, I can't move." "What the hell is this?" His voice thundered with frustration. "Shut up, just stay still. We'll figure it out." Linda almost laughed. The glue had done its work, and then she heard the distant wail of sirens. Her son's voice cut through the chaos outside. "Get the equipment moved fast, Ethan." Her son, a captain with the Austin Fire Department. He was about to walk into the very nightmare his father had created. Linda pressed her trembling hands together, torn between dread and grim satisfaction. Richard had destroyed their family behind closed doors. Now those doors were about to be ripped open for Ethan, for the neighbors, for the entire world to see. The front door splintered under the weight of Ethan's sledgehammer. Firefighters stormed inside. Shouts filled the air. And then silence. She heard Ethan's voice from the recorder breaking, disbelieving. "What? What is this?" A second firefighter muttered in shock. "Oh my God!" Linda closed her eyes. She didn't need to see it to know. Her husband and her daughter-in-law had been caught in the most humiliating trap imaginable, bound together by her revenge, and exposed to the very son they had betrayed. Her plan was complete, but the fallout had only just begun. The smoke cleared, but the shame lingered. The neighbors whispered firefighters, exchanged uneasy glances, and Ethan Parker stood frozen in his childhood home, staring at the wreckage of trust. His father and his wife, two people who should have been his anchors, were carried out on stretchers covered in thin sheets, faces red with humiliation. Linda Parker watched it unfold from Carolyn Mitchell's porch. She had imagined this moment so many times, but now that it was here, the satisfaction was laced with sorrow. Revenge had unmasked the truth, but it had also torn her family apart. The bakery she had built, the home she had kept, the son she had raised, none of it felt untouched. At the hospital, Richard tried to speak, but Linda silenced him with a calm, steady voice. "Sign the divorce papers, Richard. 40 years is enough." Amanda reached for Ethan, begging for forgiveness, but he only turned away. His silence was louder than any curse. Days turned into weeks. The scandal rippled through Austin. Everyone knew the story of the fire chief's father and daughter-in-law caught in the worst betrayal imaginable. Videos spread online, whispered at church, murmured in grocery stores. For Linda, it was painful, but also liberating. For the first time in 40 years, she walked into her bakery with her head high, no longer tethered to a man who had dragged her down in secrecy and lies. Ethan moved back into the house. At first, he was quiet, his eyes shadowed by pain. But slowly, he began to heal in the small routines. He opened the bakery every morning with his mother. He carried trays of pastries, laughed faintly with customers, and even started experimenting with new recipes. "Mom," he said one afternoon, placing a tray of warm bread on the counter, "maybe we could try adding cinnamon rolls to the menu. People love them downtown." Linda smiled, her heart swelling. Then cinnamon rolls it is. The bakery thrived. Orders grew, not just because of sympathy, but because people admired Linda's resilience. She was no longer the quiet woman behind the counter. She was the woman who stood tall when her world collapsed, who protected her dignity, who defended what she built with her own hands. But healing wasn't just about business. It was about finding moments of joy again. One Saturday, Ethan surprised her by suggesting they close early. "Let's go walk by the river, Mom, like we used to when I was a kid." Linda agreed. As the sun set over the Colorado River, painting the sky in gold and pink, Ethan finally spoke the words that had been trapped in his chest. "I'm sorry you had to go through all this. I don't know how you stayed so strong." She squeezed his hand. "I stayed strong because of you. Because no matter what Richard or Amanda did, I still have my son. And that's enough." Ethan's eyes glistened, but for the first time in weeks, he smiled a real, unguarded smile. Months later, the bakery held its anniversary celebration. The line stretched down the block. Linda stood at the counter, flour on her hands, warmth in her heart, watching Ethan chat with customers. The bell on the door jingled as Carolyn walked in carrying flowers. "For you, Linda," she said. "You deserve them. You turned pain into power, and everyone here sees it." Linda felt tears prick her eyes, but they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of gratitude. She had lost a husband, a daughter-in-law, and the illusion of a perfect family, but she had gained something far more precious: truth, freedom, and a deeper bond with her son. That night, as she sat by the window of her quiet home, the aroma of baked flan filling the air, Linda whispered to herself, "This is the life I choose now. Honest, peaceful, and mine." She no longer needed revenge. She no longer needed Richard's approval or Amanda's betrayal to define her. She had herself, her son, and a community that stood by her. And sometimes that's enough for a happy ending. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruption, but we hope you will help us improve our content in the future. What do you think about Linda's journey? Was her revenge justified? Or was her strength afterward the true victory? If you were in her place, would you have chosen forgiveness or the same path she did? If you loved this story, drop 100 in the comments below. Tell us what country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story has traveled. And don't forget to share this video with someone who might need a reminder. No matter how deep the betrayal, you can still rise stronger.